Okay, is that giving some audio? Hey, Tough Cat! As you can see, technical difficulties this morning. Okay, so that's using my webcam audio, so there's a little bit of background hiss. If someone does laundry in the next room, you might be able to hear it, but at least you can hear me talking. All right. Good morning. Great sea monster. Wow, this is a party now. Cool. Well, let's do some How to Host a Dungeon. So, this is looking a little craft project. I know this is what happens when I have a little bit too much time before my playtest. I actually cut out pieces of paper to be the different strata for this world, just because I wanted to see what it looked like with a little texture and color behind it. So maybe this will look awesome. Maybe it'll look weird, but we'll find out. But I'm going to throw some tracing paper over it, and we're going to do some civilization. Yep, I know who you are, Alice. But thank you for identifying yourself. Sometimes on stream it can be a little funny when you can talk to someone forever and not realize that they're someone you've met 100 times. All right, my plan today was to test out the magician's civilization because it's the one that's had the least use. But given how many challenges I've already had this morning, I'm going to go for some good old reliable dwarves. But first, we need to generate our primordial characteristics. So I'm going to number off these strata. So it's possible that there are some people watching who don't know anything about how to host a dungeon, so I'll just give this super quick intro. How to Host a Dungeon is a game of dungeon creation. You start with a world like this one. You see here we've got a mountain range. We've got some various layers underneath the earth. As we play the game, different things will happen. So we'll find out what's in these places. So maybe there's gold ore here, and maybe there's lava there. Some dwarves are going to move in and build a dwarven fortress in this space. After a while, the dwarves will die out, and some monsters will move in, and over time, we'll develop an entire dungeon with its own history and unique characteristics and all kinds of cool stuff. But the first thing we do is we need to find out what is in this world at the start before anything else happens. So the first thing I'm going to number off these strata, just so we can randomize, and then we're going to find out what's in each layer. So I have a series of random tables here in the game that I roll on to find out what's in each place. So we do the surface separately, so we're actually going to start with number 2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll an 8-sided dice to find out, an 8-sided die to find out what is there, and a 10-sided die to find out how much of it is, how big, what's it shaped like. So for area number 2, we get a 3 and a 1. So 3 is caves, and a 1 is 1d6 plus 1 caverns that are not connected. So we got 4 unconnected caverns. So I'll take out my cavern pen here, and I'm just going to draw 4 cave-like rooms, and I'm just going to do some, your classic limestone caves with stalactites and stalagmites. Maybe we'll make some different shapes. And there we go. Let's also give this edge a little bit more definition so it's visible on the camera. when you play How to Host a Dungeon, you can draw it as complicated as you like or as simple as you like. I mean, I tend to get a little overcomplicated, as you can tell, because I've already done a craft project here today. But, you know, just like circles and lines, like these caves could just be circles or squares. That's fine. I really get into the drawing. If I get really carried away, you may see me start busting out the acrylic paints and really making a mess. Yeah, that's a great point, Sea Monster. You can totally do that if you're willing to just kind of fudge it a bit. If maybe you have an idea where the dungeon is starting from, even if it's in a state where we've already got a dungeon, there's some rooms, there's some people living there, I know who those are. That's totally cool, and actually it would be great to have a page on how to do that in the rules. In this draft of the game, I'm going to try and include a lot more stuff about just how to use the game to spark your own imagination. And make it less, less of a set of rules and more of a set of tools and guidelines and idea generators. All right, let's find out what's in stratum number 3. So here we have number 6, which is a biome. So, and a number 6 biome, which is one huge cavern filling almost the entire stratum with a biome in it. We can roll another d6 to find out what our biome is like, if we wish, and I'm going to do that. So it is an alien biome. Okay, so this should be an interesting challenge. So what kind of cavern does this alien biome exist in? So I'm going to kind of just start down here and make a series of stepped but connected chambers to make this cavern. Yeah. And since it is right next to the surface, I'm gonna have a little surface entrance here. So this biome is going to be home to some alien vegetation. What's a good color for our alien vegetation? Let's pull out the pink and the purple. So, and as I said, I like to overthink things. So I'm going to think a little bit about what this alien vegetation looks like. So mushrooms or like tangling vines. I don't know if someone has an idea in the chat. Go ahead and post it. I think I'm going to just start with some kind of tangling vines. So just like a mad riot of So I'm just imagining, if some adventurers find their way in here, having to climb down these massive ropey tendrils to get to the depths and find out what's down there. Let's throw in a little red here too. Luminescent craziness, glowing orbs. I like that. How does this alien biome thrive deep underground? Where did it come from? Well, we don't have answers for those questions yet, but does thrive in the light of these massive glowing blue orbs that hang from the ceiling. Maybe this is a symbiotic life form that creates this kind of blue glow. So, in fact, I'm going to get a little blue gel pen in here because that'll lighten this up a little bit. So I love gel pens for this. I have this massive set of super cheap gel pens, not only because I can draw something and then go over it in the gel pen and get some color that's opaque and on top of the color below. But the gel pens also don't, the gel pens and the Copics don't run together that much, so I don't get a lot of smudging where I have the two in the same place. All right, number 4. Number 4 looks like we've got caves again. 1d4 small caverns connected with a tunnel. Draw a random monster group to be a denizen of this area. Okay. So let's make these caves a little bit different. Let's make like cracks and fault lines. Put in a few lines here to give it a little definition. Sometimes I feel like people shouldn't watch me play this game because then they're going to think that they should spend all this time adding little extra whistles and bells, which you absolutely should not do unless it really floats your boat, in which case you should. So this is going to have a monster group living in it. I've got my deck of monsters here. I'm just going to cut it and pull one out at random and find out what lives down there. And skeletons. Hold that a little closer so maybe you can get it focus on it. I don't know what skeletons are doing already present in the world at the beginning of time. I mean, what are they the skeletons of? Are they the skeletons of the aliens who first carried the spores of this to the world? Or maybe in this universe, skeletons came first and humans came later. What if humans evolved from skeletons? I don't know. You probably can't see what I'm writing very well. Let's try, see if gel pen works a little bit better. All right, those are the primordial skeletons. Giant quilt material. Wow, yeah. There are a lot of places that idea could go. The quilt of the gods. Actually, you know, I have a table in here that I sometimes roll on. This is just an optional table where you can roll to see why your world was created, or to at least suggest it. I'm just going to make a roll on that right now and just see what we come up with. 8. This entire world is the dream of some god / wizard / monster / ordinary person. Or chat. It's the dream of a Twitch channel that is being dreamed right now. All right. Section 5 is ore. Good. We'll have something for monsters to mine. So on a 2, we have 2d4 ore deposits scattered around this level. So 9, a goodly ore deposit. Let's let's use gold for that. I'm wondering what shape these deposits. I mean, they could just be blobs, right? Like big giant nuggets. Adventure Time is making me think of candy or something like. Oh, this is totally goofy. But what if we drew like what are those spiral candies, right? Or the ones like Candy Butler. It was not my intention to go wacky with this game, but it's just kind of happening, isn't it? That's why we play these games, to find out what our imagination and the imagination of those around us is going to produce today. It's always a surprise. 2, 3, 4, 5. Wow, there's going to be a lot of candy here. Let's have one sticking out of the ground. Going to put a little white in here and blur out the underlying lines a little bit, just to make these a little bit more distinct looking. Candy deposits. It's true. I did choose some crazy colors. All right, number 6. 7. What is 7 again? 7 is a nexus. So when we get a nexus, there's a big list of random, sort of strange and bizarre and unusual things. So this is sort of the what is the unique feature of this world? Number 1, the mother of monsters. Something horrible lives here. A dragon, the mother of monsters, a dire god, or something else. Pick a spot and place 3 monster beads and 2 treasure. So what does the mother of monsters live in? Red vines, yeah. Yep. Okay. We're going a little wacky today, and I'm just going to go for it. The mother of monsters lives in a giant, what appears to be a giant kitchen sink. It's not just a giant kitchen sink, because that would be kind of ridiculous. It just looks a lot like a giant kitchen sink. There's actually a perfectly logical explanation for it, which we won't go into just at this moment. All right, I'm just gonna blow on that so the ink doesn't mush onto my beads too much. Okay, so at some point during play, civilizations and monsters may encounter this primordial creature and fight it, be destroyed by it, kill it, take its treasure. Yeah, the whole idea of a mother of monsters, comes from Tolkien, and various mythologies have the idea of, a first monster. That's kind of where I got that idea from. All right, section 7. So here we have another nexus. In the copy of the rules that's currently available online, it instructs you only to have one nexus per dungeon. But the feedback I got from playtesters was, that's boring because nexuses are cool. So let's have another nexus. Number 5, the dungeon heart. The heart of the dungeon is here. Put 2 monster beads here. Once they're gone, replace it with a legendary treasure. Everything, including the kitchen sink. Yes, I've thrown in the kitchen sink, and now I'm putting my heart into it. A heart into it. Let's get some really bright gel pen in there as well. Man, I'm so close to busting out those paints now. Speaking of which, paint pen. Let's see if we can get this to... All right, I think that'll do the job. By the way, I owe part of my love of messing around with bright colors and markers and inks and stuff to one, Go Play Northwest. Great Sea Monster had an amazing picture of a ship. Was it a flying ship? I think. And I have never had formal art training, and so I didn't know some of the cool things you can do with opaque colors, and the detail on that and the way the colors were blended just really blew me away. That sort of started me down a path which is still inspiring me a lot today, to just experiment with color and materials and multimedia. So shout out to Great Sea Monster for that inspiration. All right, one more section, and this is a 6. And item number 6 is another biome. Okay, so this is a pretty unusual dungeon. So a 4 on the biome table is one huge cavern filling almost the entire stratum with a biome in it. And let's find out what kind of a biome we have. Sorry, there's a typo in the rules. It says roll a d10, but there are only 6 entries on the table. A crystalline biome. Just make that note in the rules. So now we have rival biomes. So crystal and biome, huh? Well, that sounds kind of like a geode to me. So I'm going to kind of draw a kind of in keeping with the layered texturing of this particular level. All right, and crystals. What's a good color for the crystals? I think I've got a couple of intense blues here that so we got some great big fat crystals, and then let's make some smaller crystals. I'm just layering some triangles here, so I think my goal for tomorrow is going to be to see if I can get the camera to be a little more zoomed in. Give us a little bit more detail on the stream, because it's, let's see if I've got a really dark blue here somewhere that I can use to give those a little definition. Here we've got B99, the appropriately named color agate. That crystal totally does not look like a rude drawing. Stop thinking it. Oh yeah, I guess links are not allowed. I'm totally a novice at managing my chat. Otherwise, I would enable it. Yes, rock candy. If someone knows how to enable links in chat, I will make them a mod so that they can enable that, because I think everyone here, just about everyone here is people I know. So yeah, this is one thing with using this, heavily textured paper underneath, is the crystals don't really show that well. I mean, maybe I'll kind of work on my technique for that and figure out a way. Like maybe I could have cut up a piece of paper and stuck it under here and then drawn on it or something. Not giving me a ton of traction here, but I'm going to give it a shot anyway. Oh yeah, this is messy. Messy can be fun. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Oh, okay. Thanks for the info, Half-Cat. I would love to know more about it. Eric Vulgaris has been helping me out a lot too, just kind of learning how to do things. There's an awful lot to streaming. It's got to be one of the most, I think, challenging things I've ever taken on. All right, so I think we have one more dice roll, which is to determine what is on the surface. Which I have to find that table. It's in here somewhere. There we go. This is one of those funny rules things. It sort of makes logical sense to roll for the surface first. Just because I think most people's brains, that's where they want to start. Like I always start my numbers, I always call the surface level 1. It's just automatic for me, even though it doesn't necessarily have to be level 1 for any reason. The reason that you decide what's on the surface last is because the surface is the most complicated layer. It can have the most complicated results. So if you're playing this the first time, rolling through the individual layers is kind of a tutorial, right? Like when you get caves, that's actually a little tutorial on what it's like to draw rooms and how to host a dungeon. When you get something more complicated like an underground river or a biome, that's a little tutorial on, hey, stretch your thinking and get creative and don't worry too much about how you draw it. Then the surface is last because it's sort of you use those skills when you do the surface. The drawback to that is it logically, at least for me, doesn't flow that way. So it goes. So now I'll roll for the surface. Having given that little speech, I'll probably roll something super simplistic because the surface can be simple. It just often isn't. Number 1. 1 to 4 small, distinct terrestrial biomes like forest, plains, brush, desert, etc., scattered across the surface. The number on the die determines the number of biomes. So one biome. I'm actually going to fudge that because we've got this mountain. I think we need to have 2 biomes. It just doesn't make sense otherwise. So I'm just going to roll for what those will be. On this side, we're going to have forest. And on this side, we're going to have desert. Excellent. Yeah, would you be open to being added, Half-Cat, to being added as a mod on my stream? Because currently I don't get very many people, so I don't actually have any mods. But it would be nice knowing that there are some folks out there who have some mod permissions. Awesome. I think I remember how to add someone as a mod. There we go. Thank you, Half-Cat. So we've got a dense primordial forest on the slopes of the mountain. And over on the other side, a screaming desert wilderness of sand dunes. With ferocious winds from the wasteland. Desert winds. Verdant forest. Okay, and that's our primordial age. You use those powers only for evil. All right, well, I made you a mod, so whatever I have unleashed upon the earth, let it be therefore upon my head. All right, so the next step is I'm going to layer another level of tracing paper over this, and we're going to do the Dwarven civilization. You don't have to use tracing paper. You can just do one page, or you can do it digital, or you can use regular paper. Actually works fine. When I do this myself, I actually use regular paper almost all the time because it's much, much easier to draw on than tracing paper. It takes the colors much better. But when I go on stream, I use tracing paper because then you can see better what's underneath. If I use regular paper, I can make out what is on the layer below pretty easily, but it does not come through on the stream. So, all right, I'm going to set aside monsters, and we're just going to do this super quick and dirty because that's how I roll. Tape this down with a little paper, painter's tape so it's easy to pick up later. Try not to cut myself on camera. And there we go. Return the kitchen sink monster to its home. Oh, and the dungeon heart also is supposed to have monsters on it. There are a lot of monsters. This is going to make it really rough on any civilization. But that's part of the game. All right, the Dwarven civilization. So, dwarves enter the map from the side. Pick a spot on either side of the map near a source of mineable ore. If no such source exists, pick a random spot. So, this is clearly where the dwarves are going to want to start mining. I think I'm going to have them just have an entrance tunnel that avoids all the other features for now, because this is a dwarven expedition looking for a new home, and I'm sure they're going to get into enough trouble as it is. So the dwarven city starts with 3 rooms. A dwarven dormitory, a couple of vaults. Let's use yellow for our dwarves. Hey, Dyson Logos. Thank you. That is high praise coming from the master of maps himself. Oh, Taftcat, that sounds pretty awesome. If I get a chance, I might tune in for some of that. I'm going to be running around doing errands most of this afternoon, but I would love to see what that's like. All right, I'm going to leave the name for this dwarven city blank for the moment, and just if someone in chat wants to make suggestions, then please do, and I'll grab them. If it's a I don't know what you call a candy dwarf city, because these are probably candy dwarves, since they're going to be mining the candy deposits. I don't know. We'll find out. So one of the challenges with civilizations, actually probably my biggest design challenge with the game right now that I don't have a solution for is when you have a monster group like these skeletons here and a civilization coexisting on the same map, things tend to go a little wonky. Basically, you can think of a civilization in How to Host a Dungeon as a wind-up toy. You wind it up and it pretty much goes and generates a bunch of rooms and some randomness and leaves that behind for your adventurers to explore. But monster groups are like little ecosystems that kind of run on their own, and basically the ecosystem of the monster group can disrupt the civilization and just put it into a state where it can't recover and doesn't do anything interesting. But if that happens, it'll be a learning experience in this game. The Mother of Monsters and the Heart of the Dungeon monsters, they're not monster groups, they're just monster beads, so they don't do anything unless they're encountered, so they don't actually pose a problem. I'm thinking of taking monster groups out of the Primordial Age, but I kind of don't want to just because it's cool. All right, so let's get started. How do we do dwarves? So the first thing that happens is more dwarves move in. Let's, I'm going to use the hex pattern of this level of the dungeon. I guess there's something about that rock that lends itself to hex patterns, and I'm going to Big Rock Candy Mountain. Yeah, okay, that's true. Sweet Stone. I think I can use both of those. Let's call this whole thing Big Rock Candy Mountain. The Big Rock Alien Candy Mountain. I like, I'm going to call it Candy Stone. Now let's call it Sweet Stone. What was Sweet Stone? That was the suggestion? Yeah, let's call it Sweet Stone. I like it because it sounds like Tombstone. So it's like a gritty dwarven mining town on the frontier full of candy. Next, the dwarves exploit candy. So we're going to mine out this. I'm just going to draw a little ladder here to get up to the mining site, because why not? And then, of course, we need a new vault to keep the raw candy ore in. Now we build a dwarven construction. And I see I've already made a mistake. The dwarves were supposed to start with a population of 2 instead of 1, which would mean they would now have 3 and they have 2. But that's tough. I'm just going to continue. So because their population is 2, they build a tomb. I guess someone died on the road. We'll just put it off here. Yes, there's nothing can quite compare to Jawbreaker plate armor. No one has found a way to best that technology yet. All right, and then we go back to the beginning. So the dwarves, oh, actually no, the skeletons need to do something. I forget, we've got skeletons. So skeletons are actually a pretty quiet monster. They don't really stir up the world very much usually. So what skeletons do on their turn is they always ally with undead if undead are to be found, but of course there aren't because they're the only monsters in the world. If they destroy a monster group, then they can expand using their bones. That's not very likely to happen. So what they're going to do is they're going to explore. So first I'm going to draw these caves that they're currently living in just to indicate what their current territory is. And then I'm going to have them explore along these cracks and turn them into tunnels. And I'll put a little door at the end. So at some point, they'll probably encounter the dwarves and start fighting them and we'll see what happens then. So back to the dwarves. So now we'll mine out some more candy ore. We'll add another vault. And then we will build the dwarven workshops. At this point, I guess the dwarves have discovered that there's an alien biome. I think they're just going to put a big door there because that's weird, and currently they don't want to have anything to do with that. I'm going to draw, I don't know, some kind of a boiler here in the workshop. All right, the skeletons will continue to explore. Let's connect up that alien biome. Now the skeletons fight any monster group that is not undead. So this is where things could go very bad for the dwarves, but we'll find out. Let's get some d6s. So I don't have a yellow d6. I'll use this black d6 for the dwarves, the green one for the skeletons. This is an even fight. Probably civilizations should have some kind of a bonus when they fight other monsters. So I think I'm just going to give the dwarves +1 because they really should be in some way superior to a monster group. Let's dice it off. So the dwarves get a 3, the skeletons get a 2, the dwarves destroy 1 skeleton. That wasn't so bad. And we'll keep on building. I think my plan with the dwarves is I'm going to have them build some things that give them a little bit more firepower, and then see if they can take on the mother of monsters without suffering too much damage themselves. And now the dwarves build a drinking hall. I'm going to keep building in this direction. Also known as a pub. Oh, and we need to mark that as a fortification. This now gives the dwarves +1 to dice rolls when they're attacked, which will be very useful against the skeletons. All right, see you later, Great Sea Monster. Thank you so much for stopping by. Yes, I am going to do this tomorrow. Kill them so we can get some skeleton dwarves. Yeah, I'm in favor of that. I'm not sure it's going to happen in this case, but we shall see. Yeah, I'm going to do this again tomorrow at 10 a.m. I might be able to do it on Friday too, but I have a doctor's appointment in the morning, so it's sort of dicey. I'll try and announce on Twitter what I'm going to do. Curse my, appointments and errands and job that prevent me from doing this every day. All right, so skeletons explore. Since they seem to be all about linking things up, let's have them come over here and investigate the idea of crystal skeletons. But first, they must fight the dwarves, who now have another +1. And the dwarves win that 5-4. So the primordial skeletons are wiped out. And the dwarves take their treasure. I guess the dwarves can just build some treasure vaults. Let's put a door here to, keep them secure. Skeletons dead. Goodbye, skeletons. Perhaps you will come back in the Age of Monsters. All right, so now it's just the dwarves, and this will probably go pretty fast. So I'm just going to start zipping through the turns until it gets interesting. So new dwarves, new mine, new treasure. At 5, I can build a power plant or a smelter. That's an interesting question. I'm leaning towards a power plant. Yes, I'm going to try and do the magicians tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow things will go a little more smoothly and I'll have more time. I'm going to build a crystal power plant. I think the dwarves have figured out how to harness power from these crystalline entities buried here. Oh, a smelter to melt down candy. Why didn't I think of that? Well, since this is rock candy, this is actually candy power. Let's get some candy power emanating off of that. All right, cool. So I'm going to keep building. At some point, the dwarves are bound to encounter this monster. And so what happens when they do is very simple. The mother monster loses some of its strength, and a dwarf is killed. And then I'm going to draw like a super thick wall here as they realize that there's something terrible there and that they don't really want to tangle with that. So they're going to wall it off for now. But that means that the dwarves' population is still 5, so now they can build that candy smelter. Oh. First we have to mine some candy out. Sugar rush. Speaking of which, where are we going to build that candy smelter? I guess it should just be near the candy mines. So let's put it here. And I'm going to draw a massive cauldron, streams of molten candy. Oops, sounds like my wife is home. 1 second. Hello. Okay, now I can build craft and industry construction. So just, you can't see this super well, but how the dwarven build works is as their population goes up, there are different things that they can build, some of which give them different bonuses. Once they build a power plant, then they can also build these industry constructions, and once they build a smelter at population 5, they can build these craft constructions. It lets you give your own Dwarven fortress a little bit of its own flavor. And also, if you want to aim for one thing, like if you want to concentrate on building fortifications that make them more powerful against enemies or gathering large treasures, then you can sort of pick a direction to send them in. Okay, so let's just continue with the dwarves. Add some dwarves. Mine out some treasures. Build a vault. Now, population 6. We can build the Gates of Dwarf, which are a massive gate for the fortress, or the Underground Highway, or the Dwarven City. Well, Dwarven City is pretty tempting. I don't know. I'm kind of inclined to build some like massive gates down here at the edge of the map. I think that's what I'm leaning towards. There just isn't really a great, nice, big, empty space for them to put their city in. All right, so let's build some dwarf gates. And of course, these dwarf gates, like any good dwarf gate, have some massive stylized dwarf faces on them. The dwarf gates also serve as a fortification. Maybe I'll build some, I'm going to just draw some kind of guard rooms here, and murder holes, arrow slits, because who doesn't love that stuff? I'll try and take a good picture of this and post it online after this. City next to the reactor, like down here. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Well, I can still build a city. I can do that next if I want. So, we'll add some dwarves. We'll mine for candy. And we'll build. So 7 allows us to build a furnace, a foundry, or a manufactory. Or I could just draw the city too. Yeah, I'm totally going to draw Dwarven City. So, power conduits coming from the reactor. The massive gates. There's a tunnel leading into the city. Since we've got a reactor, we need use some yellow to put some big lights hanging from the ceilings. If you want a fast city, just draw some slightly overlapping geometric shapes and put windows on them. what is the name for the dwarven city that evolves from the settlement of Sweetstone? I'm gonna just let that question hang out there for a little bit while I expand population 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Guess now that we've got a city, we can start storing some treasure closer to the city. Well, the city is supposed to have a landmark, a library, throne, statue, monolith, basilica, or pillar. Well, I guess we will have a statue of the Great Dwarf holding his cane of office, standing over all dwarfdom as a benevolent advisor. I'm terrible with names too. Actually, that's one of my my when I game master, my gamers get pretty irate with me sometimes for the horrible names that I come up with for things. Okay, so what did I just do? We just mined out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I guess it's time for another turn. I'm going to actually have some dwarves move into the city. I don't think they need to expand the slums when they can live in luxury. And here, the dwarves encounter the surface. Some slag heaps there from the mining. Now at a population of 8, we can build an agora or an aqueduct, an impossible engine, or a doom weapon. Well, I wonder if an industrial accident, if we do an impossible engine, we can take another build action and then end the dwarf civilization a turn earlier. No, I'm going to do the doom weapon because it lets me put an epic treasure on the map, and epic treasures are cool. So I guess the story here is the dwarves know the mother of all monsters lives in the mountain, guarding a fabulous treasure, obviously. So why wouldn't they build a doom weapon to destroy her? So they're going to build the doom spear. The doom spear is a spear imbued with crystalline energy. I'm just going to use this piece of foam to draw it on. Can't really see it super well, unfortunately. Doesn't look terribly like much. We'll start down there. So the point of an epic treasure is it's just like one of these beads, except it remains throughout the game. So it may be passed from group to group, lost, found again, all that good stuff. And yet, little do the dwarves know how close their civilization is to ending as they add their 10th population and mine out the last of the candy load. Oh, how close they are to their end. So, candy bomb, yeah. Now, I think it's time for an industrial accident. So at population 10, the dwarves build one of 3 things. The dwarf war, they delve too deep, or an industrial accident. They can build a lower construction if they want to, but then their civilization just ends anyway. If you build one of the 10 level constructions, then that construction is a description of how their civilization ends. And I think it is going to be an industrial accident. I think it's going to be a power plant overload. So I'm going to draw rays of blue energy shooting off this overloaded power crystal, irradiating the Dwarven city, and driving the poor dwarves from the land. And I'm going to replace power plant with radiation. It's a morality tale about relying too much on candied beverages. All right, so when the Dwarven civilization ends, remove all the Dwarven treasures and population except for epic treasures, and move on to the next stage. Yeah, the dwarves, they became a victim to their sugar addiction. You know, it's sort of, you know, you want to talk about oil addiction. Let's talk about sugar addiction. All right, so it is 11:30 Pacific time. I'm going to have to quit at 12, but this gives us time to at least start up some Age of Monsters goodness. So, oops, sorry, I gotta move my computer there to get at my knife. So I spotted some folks who are playing a game of How to Host a Dungeon on a forum using version 2 the other day, and they had some really great feedback and comments that I'm really excited about adding into the rules. Hopefully this week and get a new version out right away. Okay, so the Mother of Monsters remains in her location, the heart of the dungeon, the epic treasure. The Dwarven Ruins. Let's redraw some of the features that we know have not changed. So I'm going to redraw the mountain peak and this dwarf crater. The terrible winds of the desert. The great forests, unchanged since the dawn of time. Shifting sands, and we begin. I'm going to really quickly check the primordial age and see if there was anything about these nexuses that I need to know of. So the dungeon heart, once those monsters are dead, a legendary treasure appears there. And the Mother of Monsters, nope, she just remains there, waiting to be encountered. All right, so the Monster Age. The first thing that happens in the Monster Age is 3 monster groups will spawn in random locations. I've got my deck of monsters here. I'm going to give it a little shuffle as best I can. And then I'm going to cut it 3 times and choose 3 monsters. So our monsters are a Fiend, the Knights, and a Wizard. This should be interesting. So, the Fiend will spawn in the alien jungle. So I'm just going to kind of pick this room right in the middle of it. I'm gonna draw a pillar of black flame, just because I don't know. A fiend should have a cool thing in their lair. She is a yellow fiend with 2 treasures. When she spawns, she immediately gets to take a turn. So fiends hunt. There's no one to hunt. She does not have enough treasure to do anything interesting. Most of the things she can do require neighbors, so or she or he. The picture is of a female demon, but I don't feel like gendering my demon just yet, so I'm going to try not to do that. The knights. The knights always spawn on the surface, but I am going to roll 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to see if they live in the forest, the desert, or the mountaintop. They are desert knights. When they spawn, they build a chapter house of their order. So I'm just going to build this kind of squat, military-looking base with a flag. The knights are consummate monster hunters and monster killers, but they're not very good at replenishing their losses. So they will start there in the desert. The knights. The fiend. And the wizard. The wizard starts in zone number 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the wizard's home is in the abandoned dwarven halls. So I think I'm gonna take these 3 rooms and convert them into a sort of a wizard's tower with some stairs, and I don't know, that's kind of the wizard's lab sort of dealy wizard. The wizard can be blue. So both the wizard and the knights spawn with what is called a bonus token, which I found these star buttons that I like for those. So I will give them each a bonus token. That gives them basically a bonus when they're fighting, at least until it's used up. Some monster groups, when they have a bonus token, they can use it to do other special stuff too. Yeah, I forgot that we had an Adventure Time theme going on here. Yeah, I love that actually. Now my brain is now completely reconfiguring to see these knights, this wizard, and this fiend as being Adventure Time themed again, because I totally forgot that. I'm gonna draw that little tunnel in because it's somewhere that the knights could go. Okay, so now we take our 3 monsters. We randomize them as best we can. Fortunately, I have a terrible memory, so after I've shuffled them for a few seconds, I won't know what order they're in. And the fiend takes their turn first. So the fiend hunts. There is no one for the fiend to hunt currently. No one for them to ally with, to fight, or to trade with. So they simply expand their territory by scouting. They discover the ancient dwarven workshops, which are now full of wreckage and detritus that's not of particularly much interest to them. Let's draw in some alien vines. See, this is these are vines of purple licorice. That's why it's alien, because licorice isn't purple, as everyone knows. The wizard. The wizard always explores. Terribly curious creatures they are. So when a monster scouts, they kind of expand their territory a little bit in every direction. When they explore, they go in a specific direction. So I'm just going to pick a direction for him to explore. You get to choose where they explore. If you want, you can have them explore towards things that are useful for them. I could have had the wizard explore to the other monsters, who would have promptly wiped him out. So I decided not to do that. Maybe when he gets powerful enough, he'll challenge her. Then he may build something if he has the right materials. He does. He can expend his bonus marker to build, so he is going to do that, and he's going to build a laboratory. So let's expand these old dwarven dwellings to be a lab. And the reason a lab is useful to him is it allows him to expand his strength. Perhaps he has built a golem in his lab to back himself up. And finally, the knights. The knights also always explore. I'm going to be a little bit more foolhardy for them because their whole reason is to always challenge powerful monsters. So they are going to discover the legendary sink wherein dwells the Clog, who kills a knight but loses a point herself. And now we spawn a new monster. A vampire, wow. Awesome. A candy vampire, a sugar vampire. Its metabolism cannot create sugar on its own. It must extract it from other creatures. The sugar vampire appears in stratum number 7, which is where the Mother of Monsters lives. No, actually, sorry, 5, 6, 7, sorry, the Dungeon Heart. Clearly, the vampire desires to conquer the fabulous and legendary Dungeon Heart and claim the epic treasure that lies there, but unfortunately, being only 1 bead, he is not powerful enough to do that on his own. So we'll use a black bead. The vampire is fabulously wealthy, and I guess he will be the keeper of the gates. I mean, perhaps he's a dwarven vampire, the last guardian of the gates, who now guards them eternally. Longing for the candy that once belonged to all dwarves, but now does not. And he gets to take his turn. He can hunt. Can he hunt the Dungeon Heart monsters? Sure. I think they're close enough that I'm just going to connect them up and devour a Dungeon Heart monster. Vampire. Dungeons are full of sadness. Joy is but fleeting in the dungeon. All right. The Fiend. All she can currently do is continue to expand her territory, seeking creatures to hunt, or trade with, or ally with. It's a lonely world in the beginning. Maybe they will have friends. The vampire. So the vampire may always hunt, so the vampire hunts that out and unearths the legendary heart of the dungeon. which he can store in these old fortifications. Perhaps something to replace his own empty heart. Oh yes, and then is there anything else he can do? There's really no one else around for him to interact with currently, so we're just gonna scout. Leading into the entrance of the old dwarven city. The knights. They always explore. So let's discover some of these ancient mines. Now, they always fight the most powerful group encountered. That's going to have to be the mother monsters. So they defeat her, thwarting the wizard's plans, and contemplate the mystery of the sink. If at any time the knights defeat a monster that you consider to be a worthy opponent, they may immediately build a suitable monument. Sure. And so they build the monument of Plunger Henge. And a wizard. Wizard explores. Let's have him discover the vampire, because I think these two could have some pretty interesting interactions. A wizard can recruit humanoids. The vampire's not technically a humanoid. He can exploit ore, but the dwarves left no ore for him to exploit. There's not really much for the wizard to do right now, so we will leave him be. Blank card. A demonic horde spawns in the either the Dwarven City or the Radiation Caves. Okay, so this should be interesting. Unfortunately, we're not really going to have time to see what this demonic horde does. If I get some time later on today or tonight, maybe I'll try and finish this game off, just because I'm now really curious how it's going to go. So, demonic hordes can exploit any resource, including gold, gems, or water, or biomes. This is technically a biome, so they can just eat these gems and continue to grow indefinitely. So they always exploit a resource. So the first thing they do is they devour some of these gems, crystals, I should say, and derive the basic sustenance from them. If they exploit it, they grow. I'm going to use orange to show the absence of biome there. Then they can explore. Down the former power conduits to the ruins of the Dwarven City. Now dark, since the orbs have fallen. So emo. Thank you, Mechnic0. So that is all I can do today, unfortunately, because I have errands and meetings after this and lunch. But thank you so much for joining me for this. I think this generated a ton of cool ideas and some cool drawings. I will take some pictures of this and post them online on my Patreon and on Twitter. So, follow me on Twitter if you don't already, because that would be cool. And thank you so much for joining me, everybody. This was a hell of a lot of fun. Yeah, I am gonna try and finish this. The Knights of the Throne Room. Oh, that's so good. All right. You may not be good at coming up with names, but you are great at coming up with jokes. Yeah, I'm gonna try and finish this just because I've never played a Demonic Horde out to completion, so I really want to see what happens with that for sure. Because that might need a little bit of tweaking. I don't know if I'll be able to stream it. I might be able to at least record it and post it online. And I'll also post this recording on YouTube and possibly elsewhere. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.